So you own the whole thing. Every grain of sand, every palm, every square foot of reef. No neighbors, no noise ordinances, no homeowners association. Just you, the water, and a flag you can plant wherever you want. That's the fantasy. Total sovereignty, wrapped in turquoise. Here's the paradox nobody puts in the brochure. The island is never the expensive part. The land itself is often the cheapest line item on the entire deal. Everything required to keep four walls standing and a human being alive on that land is what bankrupts people. Water, power, waste, staff, insurance. A hurricane season that doesn't care what you paid. An asset with zero neighbors also has zero infrastructure to borrow from. You're not buying real estate. You're buying a nation-state with a population of 1, and you're the only taxpayer. Stick around. By the end, you'll understand why the barrier to owning an island isn't the purchase price. It's the electricity bill. No, Tier 1. Bootstrapped. A speck of scrub and sand somewhere in the Exumas or off the coast of Belize. Price tag, $200,000 to $1.5 million. No structures, no dock, no power grid, often no fresh water table to speak of. You are buying raw coordinates and a deed. The island itself is basically a rounding error. Tier 2, mid-market, a developed private island in the Caribbean or the South Pacific. One villa, a generator shed, maybe a staff cottage. $4 to $15 million. This is where the real spending starts. Desalination plant, diesel or solar microgrid, a dock rated for supply boats. At this tier, buyers often underestimate the permitting timeline. Environmental review, marine construction permits, and import duties on every piece of equipment can stretch a simple villa build into a 3-year project before a single guest ever arrives. Tier 3, institutional. The kind of island that shows up in a magazine spread, 20 million and up. Sometimes well past 100 million for a private archipelago with an airstrip. At this tier, you're not buying a home. You're building a self-sufficient municipality, and municipalities have budgets, not vibes. You're now funding a full-time crew roster, a private airstrip certified to aviation standards, marine infrastructure rated for open ocean supply runs, and a security detail that never clocks out. The sticker price on the deed is almost a footnote compared to the standing payroll required to keep the place operational for the next 30 years. Now, here's the mechanism almost nobody understands until they're standing in the middle of it. A private island doesn't generate revenue by existing. It generates cost by existing every single day, whether anyone is standing on it or not. Insiders call this the standing burn, the fixed cost of simply keeping the island alive, occupied or not. Generator fuel doesn't pause because the owner is back in New York. Staff still need paying. Salt air still corrodes every hinge, every rail, every circuit board, whether a guest is there to see it happen or not. Think of it like owning a spaceship permanently parked in orbit. Life support runs continuously, or the whole system dies. The second insider term is redundancy load. On the mainland, if your power goes out, you call the utility company. On an island, the utility company is you. Every system needs a backup system, and often a backup for the backup. 2 generators, not 1. 2 water desalination units, not 1. A satellite uplink, because cell towers don't grow on private atolls. Here's the counterintuitive fact that violates normal business logic. Adding one more guest to the island often doesn't raise costs. Diesel is already burning, staff are already on payroll. The desalination plant is already running at capacity regardless of headcount, which means most owners eventually flip the model. They stop treating the island as a private retreat and start renting it out, because the incremental guest is nearly free while the empty island still bleeds cash every single day. Now look at how the physical design of these places quietly manipulates you. Walk any high-end private island and notice what's missing. Fences, locks on interior doors, visible utility infrastructure. Every generator shed, water tank, and staff dormitory is deliberately pushed to the leeward side, hidden behind a ridge or a stand of palms, so the paying guest never sees the machinery keeping them alive. That invisibility is expensive. Burying cable and piping across raw coral and volcanic rock costs multiples of what the same infrastructure costs on flat mainland soil. The open sightlines, the uninterrupted horizon, the sense that nothing stands between you and the ocean, all of it is manufactured by shoving millions of dollars of ugly machinery somewhere you'll never look. And here's the invisible liability underneath the illusion. Erosion, storm surge, rising insurance premiums in hurricane corridors. Underwriters increasingly treat private islands the way they treat oil platforms. High value, high exposure, limited comparable data, which means premiums climb faster than almost any other category of residential property. Some owners find their annual insurance bill alone exceeds what a mainland mansion costs to run for a year. There's a second hidden cost buried in the sand itself: beach nourishment. Every storm season strips a layer of coastline away, and replacing it artificially, trucking or barging in matched sand and regrading the shoreline, is a recurring expense most buyers never see mentioned until the first major bill arrives. An island isn't a fixed asset, it's a slowly eroding one, and the owner is quietly paying to keep the coastline exactly where the sales brochure photographed it. Now the fatal flaw, and two real examples of what happens when the model breaks. The fatal flaw is simple: an island has no elasticity. On the mainland, if a hotel underperforms, you cut staff, delay a renovation, ride it out. An island has no slack in the system. The desalination plant either runs or the property is uninhabitable. There is no partial version of keeping people alive. Case 1 is a textbook capital structure collapse. In the 1970s and 80s, a Bahamian island called Norman's Cay was purchased and transformed by Colombian trafficker Carlos later as a private staging ground, complete with an airstrip and docks funded almost entirely by an off-the-books cash stream tied to a single criminal enterprise. When that funding source collapsed under law enforcement pressure in the early 1980s, there was no legitimate capital structure underneath the island at all. No bank, no diversified revenue, no fallback. The entire operation evaporated overnight. The island was seized, and the physical infrastructure sat abandoned for years. A brutal illustration of what happens when an island's entire existence depends on one fragile, undiversified source of capital. Case 2 is market mismatch and operational friction, and it's one of the most famous business failures of the last decade. The 2017 Fire Festival was marketed around a private island in the Exumas, once rumored to have belonged to Pablo Escobar. The organizers sold a luxury island experience without the underlying infrastructure to support it. No adequate housing, no functioning kitchens, no logistics chain capable of feeding and moving hundreds of guests on a remote landmass with no existing supply infrastructure. The mismatch between the marketed fantasy and the physical reality of what an undeveloped island can actually support triggered an instant, very public, and very expensive collapse. Both failures trace back to the same root cause. Neither operation respected the standing burn. One assumed illegal capital would flow forever. The other assumed marketing hype could substitute for a working desalination plant and a functioning kitchen. The ocean doesn't negotiate with either assumption. Strip away the marketing, and the equation is brutally simple. Island revenue minus standing burn, minus insurance, minus redundancy capital equals a number that's usually far smaller than buyers expect. Realistic net margins on a rented-out private island, once every fixed cost is accounted for, tend to land somewhere around 15 to 25%. Nowhere near the passive fantasy sold in the listing photos. The people who actually win this game are the ones who never intended to live there. Operators like the ownership group behind Necker Island, who transformed a private retreat into a branded, fully booked commercial rental asset with year-round occupancy, understood from day one that an island only makes financial sense as a business, never as a hideaway. The system isn't built for the person who wants to disappear from the world. It's built for the person who never stops running the numbers. Because on an island, the ocean doesn't care about your business plan, and it never sends a warning before the bill comes due. The dream was sovereignty. The reality is a standing utility bill with a view, and the only owners who survive it are the ones who stopped pretending it was a hideaway and started running it like the business it always was.